In the heart of the Mojave, 4 friends vanished without a trace, their SUV swallowed by Echo Ravine sands. 17 years later, a chilling discovery, graves, cryptic notes, and photos of something not human reopens a mystery that defies explanation. What lured them to their doom? Are the desert's lights still watching? This story, a fictional blend of real-life inspired tales, is crafted to educate and thrill. Stick with us to unravel the truth. Like, subscribe, share, and drop your location in the comments. We want to know where you're watching from. Don't miss what's next. The Mojave Desert stretched out like a cracked, sun-scorched canvas, endless and unforgiving. It was a Tuesday morning in April 2023, and the air shimmered with heat that could make your skin feel like it was peeling off. Dr. Sarah Nguyen, a wildlife biologist with a penchant for getting her hands dirty, was trudging through a dry wash near Echo Ravine, a desolate stretch just outside Joshua Tree National Park. She was alone, her boots crunching against the gravel, her eyes scanning for bobcat scat or paw prints for a migration study. The sun was already climbing, pushing the temperature past 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and the silence was so thick it felt like it could choke you. That's when she saw a glint of silver winking at her from the sand, half buried like a secret the desert didn't want to share. Sarah knelt, her gloved fingers brushing away the grit. She expected a soda can, maybe a lost keychain from some careless camper. Instead, her breath caught as she uncovered a silver necklace, its pendant engraved with the letters EC. The chain was tarnished, weathered by years of wind and sun, but it wasn't junk. It was personal, deliberate, like someone had meant to leave it behind or hadn't meant to lose it. Her pulse quickened. She set the necklace on a flat rock and dug deeper, her trowel scraping against something solid. A torn backpack emerged, its canvas faded to a sickly gray, zipper rusted shut. Inside, she found a plastic case holding a roll of 35mm film, brittle but intact, and a crumpled piece of paper. The handwriting was shaky, scrawled in blue ink, "Don't trust the lights at night." Sarah froze. The words hit like a punch, raising the hairs on her neck. She glanced around, half expecting to see someone watching from the dunes. Nothing but sand and twisted creosote bushes stared back. Her radio crackled in her pack, and she fumbled for it, her voice barely steady. "Base, this is Sarah," she said, her words tumbling out. "I found something out here. It's not an artifact. There's a necklace, a backpack, and a note. I think it's human." A pause, then a gruff voice came through. "Sarah, slow down." "What do you mean, human? You got coordinates?" "Yeah, I'm at the lower wash, about 2 miles east of Echo Ravine. But listen, there's more." She hesitated, her eyes darting to the sand where her trowel had caught on something else, something pale and smooth, protruding like a forgotten relic. She brushed away more dirt, and her stomach lurched. A human bone, unmistakably a forearm, lay exposed, its surface bleached white by the sun. "Sarah?" The voice on the radio grew sharp. "You there?" "There's a bone," she whispered, barely audible. "A human bone. I'm marking the site. Send someone now." "Stay put," the voice barked. "Don't touch anything else. Could be a crime scene. We're rolling out." Sarah's hand shook as she set biodegradable orange flags around the find, her training kicking in despite the adrenaline flooding her system. The desert was silent, but it felt alive now, watching her every move. As she stepped back, she noticed something else, a faint shimmer on the horizon, like a flashlight flickering in the distance, even though it was broad daylight. She squinted, trying to make sense of it, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Her gut twisted. Something about this place wasn't right. By sundown, Echo Ravine was no longer just a footnote in Sarah's field notes. A team from Joshua Tree National Park had cordoned off a quarter-mile radius around her discovery, their trucks kicking up dust clouds that glowed red in the fading light. Rangers in khaki uniforms moved with purpose, their faces grim under wide-brimmed hats. A forensic anthropologist, Dr. Elena Torres, arrived from Riverside, her kit slung over her shoulder like she was heading to war. Sarah stood at the edge of the tape, clutching her water bottle, watching as the team unearthed more than she'd bargained for. The backpack wasn't alone. A few feet away, buried under a thin layer of wind-blown sand, they found a hiking boot, its sole melted from years of relentless heat. Then came a torn thermal blanket, the kind you'd find in a high-end survival kit, its edges frayed to threads. But it was the next find that made everyone stop cold. Just beyond a cluster of sagebrush, 3 shallow depressions marred the earth, each about 5 feet long, hand-dug, and partially collapsed. Bone fragments peeked through the dirt, stark against the red-brown soil. No headstones, no markers, just 3 makeshift graves, blending into the landscape like they'd been there forever. Elena crouched beside one of the depressions, her gloved hands moving with surgical precision. "These aren't natural," she said, her voice low but carrying in the still air. "Someone dug these, probably with their hands. Look at the edges, soon even, desperate." Sarah's throat tightened. Who would do that out here, and why? Elena didn't look up. "That's what we're here to find out, but I'll tell you one thing. This wasn't an accident. They didn't just collapse here. Someone meant to hide them." A ranger, a wiry guy named Tom with a sun-leathered face, approached with a sealed evidence bag. "Found this near the second grave," he said, holding up a rusted belt buckle. The initials LH were etched into the metal, faint but legible. "Looks personal. Maybe one of the victims." Sarah's eyes flicked to the necklace and another evidence bag, the EC glaring back at her. 2 sets of initials, 2 pieces of a puzzle she hadn't meant to uncover. She turned to Elena. "You think these people were, what, murdered?" Elena's jaw tightened. Too early to say. But the desert doesn't bury bodies like this. Someone did. The team worked into the night, their floodlights casting harsh shadows across the dunes. Sarah stayed, unable to tear herself away, her mind racing with questions. Who were these people? Why were they buried here, in the middle of nowhere? And what was that note about the lights? As the stars began to prick the sky, she noticed it again, a faint flicker on the horizon, like a lantern swaying in the distance. She blinked, and it was gone. Her heart pounded. She hadn't imagined it. Had she? The next morning, the site was a hive of activity. A second team arrived from the California Missing Persons Task Force, their SUVs parked in a tight row like a barricade against the desert's secrets. A drone hummed overhead, mapping the terrain, while forensic techs sifted through the sand with brushes and sieves. Sarah sat on a folding chair under a canopy, giving her statement to a detective named Marcus Reed, a no-nonsense guy with a notepad and a skeptical squint. "So you just stumbled on this?" Marcus asked, his pen hovering. "No tip, no map, just dumb luck?" Sarah nodded, her mouth dry despite the water she'd been chugging. "I was tracking bobcat migration patterns. The necklace caught my eye, and then, it just kept going." Marcus scribbled something, then glanced at the evidence table where the necklace, backpack, and belt buckle sat under plastic covers. "That note you found, don't trust the lights at night. Any idea what it means?" Sarah shook her head. "None. But I saw something yesterday, a light, out there." She pointed toward the horizon, where the dunes rolled into nothingness. It was daylight, but it flickered, like a signal. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You sure it wasn't a mirage? Heat plays tricks out here." "I know what I saw," Sarah said, her voice sharper than she intended. "It wasn't heat shimmer. It was deliberate." He jotted another note, his face unreadable. "We'll look into it. For now, we've got 3 sets of remains, and those initials are our best lead. EC and LH. Ring any bells?" Sarah shook her head again, but her mind was already spinning. She'd heard stories about Echo Ravine whispers from locals, about hikers who never came back, about strange lights that lured people off trails. She'd always dismissed them as campfire tales, but now, standing in the shadow of those graves, she wasn't so sure. Elena called Marcus over, her voice urgent. Sarah followed, her curiosity outweighing her exhaustion. The anthropologist was holding a small, weather-damaged journal, its pages fused together by time and moisture. "Found this near the 3rd grave," Elena said. "It's a miracle it survived. We're sending it to a lab in Vegas to steam it open, but there's a partial thumbprint on the cover. Could be our first DNA hit. Marcus nodded, his eyes narrowing. Anything else? Yeah, Elena said, pointing to a patch of sand a few yards away. Check this out. Sarah's breath caught as she saw Ida's circle of stones, each about the size of a fist, arranged in a perfect ring. It wasn't natural, not by a long shot. The stones were too uniform, too deliberate, like someone had placed them there to mark something, or to warn something away. What the hell is that? Marcus muttered, crouching beside the circle. Could be a ritual marker, Elena said. I've seen similar patterns in Native American sites, but this feels different. It's too clean, too recent. Sarah's eyes darted to the horizon again, half expecting that flicker of light to reappear. The desert was holding its breath, and she could feel it, a weight, a presence, something that didn't want her here. She forced herself to focus, but the note's words echoed in her mind. Don't trust the lights at night. By noon, the lab in Las Vegas had rushed the journal's analysis, and the results sent a shockwave through the team. The thumbprint matched a woman named Lila Harper, a freelance writer from Denver who'd vanished in July 2006, along with 3 others: Ethan Caldwell, Noah Delgado, and Ava Ruiz. The names hit Sarah like a freight train. She didn't know them, but the dates lined up 17 years ago, almost to the day. A quick search of missing persons records confirmed it. 4 friends, all in their 30s, had set out on a camping trip in the Mojave, their white Ford Explorer last seen near Echo Ravine. They'd been meticulous water tanks, satellite phones, a blog post detailing their route, yet they'd disappeared without a trace, leaving behind nothing but questions. Marcus gathered the team under the canopy, his face grim. We've got a positive ID on Lila Harper, he said, holding up a printout of her file. She was with Ethan Caldwell, a biologist from Boulder, Noah Delgado, ex-Marine-turned-journalist from Albuquerque, and Ava Ruiz, an archaeologist from Santa Fe. They were last seen 17 years ago, right around here. No distress calls, no bank activity, nothing, just gone. Sarah's eyes flicked to the necklace. EC. That's Ethan Caldwell, isn't it? Looks like it, Marcus said. And LH is Lila Harper. We're still waiting on DNA from the remains, but this is starting to look like their final resting place. Elena chimed in, her voice steady but laced with unease. The journal might tell us more. There's writing inside, but it's too damaged to read here. The lab's working on it, but I saw one line when we cracked it open. It's watching us. Sarah's stomach twisted. It? What does that mean? No idea, Elena said. But it wasn't written in a hurry. It was deliberate, like she wanted someone to find it. The team fell silent, the weight of the discovery settling over them. Sarah glanced at the stone circle again, its edges sharp against the sand. She couldn't shake the feeling that they'd stumbled into something bigger than a missing persons case, something the desert didn't want to give up. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the team packed up, leaving the site under guard for the night. Sarah drove back to her motel in 29 Palms, her mind racing. The necklace, the note, the graves, the stones, they didn't add up. Why hadn't the group used their satellite phones? Why were the graves so shallow, so deliberate? And what were those lights the note warned about? She pulled into the motel parking lot, her headlights catching a flicker of movement in the rearview mirror, a brief, shimmering glow, like a lantern in the distance. She whipped around, but the desert was dark, empty. Inside her room, she locked the door and opened her laptop, pulling up old articles about Echo Ravine. Most were fluff hiking tips, park regulations, but one caught her eye. A 1985 story about a prospector who'd vanished in the same area, leaving behind a journal with a single entry. The lights led me too far. Sarah's blood ran cold. She closed the laptop, her heart pounding, and glanced out the window. The desert stared back, silent and vast, its secrets buried deep beneath the sand. What had she stumbled into? And what was still out there, watching? The Mojave sun was a relentless hammer, pounding the earth with heat that could cook you from the inside out. It was July 13th, 2006, and a white Ford Explorer crunched across a gravel trail just outside Joshua Tree National Park, kicking up clouds of dust that hung in the air like ghosts. Inside, four friends were laughing, their voices mingling with the hum of the engine and the crackle of a classic rock playlist. Ethan Caldwell, 38, gripped the wheel, his eyes scanning the horizon for the turnoff to Echo Ravine. Lila Harper, 34, sat shotgun, her leather-bound journal open on her lap, scribbling notes about the Joshua trees that looked like they were reaching for something they'd never touch. In the back, Noah Delgado, 35, fiddled with his camera, his ex-Marine instincts keeping him alert despite the easy banter. Next to him, Ava Ruiz, 30, leaned against the window, her sunglasses reflecting the endless dunes, a faint smile playing on her lips as she dreamed of uncovering some ancient secret buried in the sand. They weren't thrill-seekers, they were planners, the kind of people who double-checked their gear and mapped every mile. Their SUV was loaded 5-gallon water jugs, a first aid kit, 2 satellite phones, a solar charger, paper maps, and a GPS unit that Ethan swore by. They'd even posted their itinerary on a blog, complete with emergency contacts and a return date of July 18th. This wasn't a reckless joyride, it was an expedition, a chance to explore the raw, untamed beauty of the Mojave. Ethan, a biologist from Boulder, Colorado, wanted to study the desert's lizards, their survival tactics, a puzzle he couldn't resist. Lila, a freelance writer from Denver, saw the trip as a chance to fill her journal with stories the desert might whisper. Noah, an ex-Marine turned investigative journalist from Albuquerque, had a secret reason for being here: rumors of unexplained disappearances in Echo Ravine that he'd been chasing for months. Ava, an archaeologist from Santa Fe, was drawn to the area's ancient petroglyphs, convinced the rocks held clues to a forgotten past. The mood in the car was light, but there was a current of something else, something unspoken. They'd stopped at a gas station in 29 Palms that morning, where a grizzled old-timer with a face like weathered leather had eyed their gear and muttered, "You folks headed to Echo Ravine? Don't camp there at night. Things move out there that ain't supposed to." Ethan had laughed it off, but Lila jotted it down in her journal, her pen scratching out the words, "Local warning lights in the desert, superstition or something real." "All right, team," Ethan said, his voice cutting through the music. "We're about 3 miles from the trailhead. GPS says we'll hit the ravine by noon. Everyone good?" Noah adjusted his camera strap, his jaw tight. "Good, but let's double-check the sat phones. I heard this place messes with signals sometimes." And Ava chuckled, nudging him. "Noah, relax. It's just sand and rocks. What's gonna get USA Rogue Coyote?" "It's not the coyotes I'm worried about," Noah said, his tone half serious. He didn't mention the articles he'd read, the ones about hikers vanishing in this very stretch of desert, their gear found miles from any trail. He'd kept that to himself, not wanting to spook the group. Lila looked up from her journal, her eyes distant. "You guys ever see lights out here? Like, not stars, but something else? I was here a couple years back, and I swear I saw something flickering, like a lantern, but there was no one around." Ethan glanced at her, his brow furrowing. "Probably a mirage. Heat does weird things to your eyes, right, Noah?" Noah didn't answer, his gaze fixed on the horizon, where the dunes seemed to shimmer with a life of their own. "Let's just stick to the plan," he said finally. "Stay on the trail, set up camp by dusk, keep the phones charged." The conversation drifted back to lighter things, Ethan's lizard obsession, Ava's theories about ancient trade routes, but Lila's words lingered, a faint chill settling over the group despite the 100-degree heat. They didn't know it yet, but they were driving straight into a mystery that would swallow them whole. By mid-afternoon, the Explorer was parked at the edge of Echo Ravine, a jagged scar in the earth where the sand gave way to rocky outcrops and twisted shrubs. The group unloaded their gear, their movements practiced and efficient. Ethan set up a canopy for shade, while Ava and Noah hammered stakes for the tents. Lila wandered a few yards away, her journal open, sketching a gnarled Joshua tree that looked like it was clawing at the sky. The air was thick, the silence oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of wind through the creosote. "Man, This place is eerie, Ava said, wiping sweat from her brow. Beautiful, but eerie, like it's waiting for something. It's just quiet, Ethan said, but his voice lacked conviction. He was kneeling by a rock, examining a lizard's tracks, his face lit with a scientist's curiosity. The desert's honest, you know? No lies, just survival. Height? Noah snorted, slinging his camera over his shoulder. Honest? Sure, but it's got secrets. I've been reading about this place. People go missing out here, Ethan. Not just lost gone, like the desert eats them. Lila looked up, her pen pausing. You're starting to sound like that guy at the gas station. What's with you, Noah? You've been jumpy since we left. Noah hesitated, then sighed. All right, fine. I didn't want to freak you guys out, but I've been digging into some old cases. Hikers, prospectors, even a park ranger back in the 80s. All vanished around Echo Ravine. Some left notes, weird ones, about lights leading them off the trail. Ava raised an eyebrow, her hands on her hips. Lights again. Come on, Noah. You're buying into campfire stories now? I'm not saying it's ghosts. Noah snapped. But something's off. I found a report from 1985. A guy named Carver. His journal said he followed a light into the ravine and never came back. They found his pack, but not him. Ethan stood, brushing sand from his knees. Okay, enough. We're not here to chase ghost stories. We've got water, maps, phones. We're not some random drifter. Let's set up camp and focus. But Lila's eyes were on the horizon, where the heat shimmered like a living thing. I saw it, you know, she said quietly. 2 years ago, near here. A light, flickering, like it was moving. I thought it was a car, but there was no road, no sound, just light. The group fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them. Noah's camera clicked as he snapped a photo of the ravine, his hand steady but his heart racing. He didn't say it out loud, but he'd seen something too a brief flash the night before, when they'd stopped to refuel. He'd written it off as exhaustion, but now he wasn't so sure. That night, they sat around a small campfire, the flames casting long shadows across the sand. The temperature had dropped to 60 degrees, but the air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on them. Ethan passed around a bag of trail mix, while Ava sketched rock formations in her notebook, her pencil scratching softly. Noah kept his camera close, his eyes scanning the darkness beyond the fire's glow. Lila wrote in her journal, her words flowing faster now, as if she needed to capture every thought before it slipped away. All right, let's go over the plan for tomorrow, Ethan said, spreading a map across a folding table. We hiked 2 miles north to the petroglyph site Ava found. Should take us about 3 hours, round trip. We'll be back by lunch, then head to Split Tooth Ridge for some photos. Sounds good, Ava said, her voice bright, but her eyes darting to the shadows. Those petroglyphs could be Anasazi, maybe older. I'm dying to see them up close. Noah leaned forward, his face half lit by the fire. Just keep an eye on the GPS. I don't trust it out here. My buddy in the Marine said desert tech can go haywire, interference from the rocks or something. Lila closed her journal, her fingers lingering on the cover. You guys hear that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Hear what? Ethan said, frowning. Listen, she said, tilting her head. The group fell silent, the only sound the crackle of the fire. Then they heard Ida faint, rhythmic hum, like a distant engine or a heartbeat. It was gone in seconds, swallowed by the wind. Probably a plane, Ethan said, but his voice wavered. We're not far from an airbase. That wasn't a plane, Noah said, standing. He grabbed a flashlight and swept its beam across the dunes. The light caught nothing but sand and rock, but the hum lingered in his ears, a sound that felt wrong, like it didn't belong. Lila opened her journal again, her pen moving quickly. I'm writing this down, she said. If something happens, someone needs to know we heard it. Ava laughed, but it was forced. You're freaking me out, Lila. It's just the desert playing tricks. Noah didn't laugh. He clicked his camera, capturing the empty darkness, his gut telling him something was out there, watching. He didn't tell the others, but he'd seen another flicker earlier, a brief, pale light, darting between the rocks like a will-o'-the-wisp. He tried to follow it, but it vanished, leaving him with a chill he couldn't shake. The next morning, July 14th, the group woke to a problem. The GPS was glitchy, its screen flickering with static, showing them 3 miles off course. Ethan cursed under his breath, pulling out the paper map. "This is why I don't trust tech," he said, tracing their route with a pencil. "We're still on track, just stick to the trail markers." But the trail markers were gone, washed away by a windstorm that had blown through at dawn. The group pressed on, their boots sinking into the soft sand, the sun climbing higher and pushing the temperature past 100 degrees. By noon, they reached a dry wash that wasn't on the map, its banks lined with strange, smooth stones arranged in a rough circle. Ava knelt, her fingers brushing the rocks, her face alight with curiosity. "This isn't natural," she said. "Look at the placement, too even, too deliberate. Could be a ritual site, maybe Navajo or Paiute." Noah's eyes narrowed. "Or something else. I don't like this place. Feels like we're being watched." Lila clutched her journal, her knuckles white. "I saw it again last night," she said, her voice low. "The light. It was closer this time, like it was circling the camp." Ethan sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. "Lila, you're letting Noah's stories get to you. It's heat, exhaustion, maybe dehydration. Let's focus on the petroglyphs." But Noah wasn't listening. He was staring at the sand near the stone circle, where a set of footprints bare, human-sized, but oddly deep trailed off into the distance. "You see those?" he said, pointing. "Those aren't ours." The group froze, their eyes following the tracks until they disappeared over a dune. Ava's smile faded, her hand tightening around her pencil. Maybe another hiker?" she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "No one's out here," Noah said, his hand resting on the knife at his belt. "Not this far off the trail." Lila scribbled in her journal, her words frantic. "Footprints, not ours. Light again last night. Something's wrong." She looked up, her eyes wide. "We need to stick together. Whatever's out here, it knows we're here." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but a low hum cut him off, the same sound from the night before, louder now, pulsing through the air like a warning. The group stood rooted, their hearts pounding, as the desert seemed to close in around them. Noah raised his camera, his hand shaking, and snapped a photo. The lens caught a faint blur in the distance, a figure, maybe, or just a trick of the light. He didn't show the others. Not yet. By dusk, the group was rattled, their easy camaraderie fraying at the edges. They'd missed the petroglyph site, the GPS now completely dead, and their water was running low, 3 gallons left for 4 people in a 110-degree furnace. They set up camp near the wash, the stone circle looming 100 yards away like a silent sentinel. Noah kept watch, his camera trained on the darkness, while Ethan pored over the map, muttering about landmarks. Ava sketched the stone circle, her hands trembling, and Lila wrote, her journal filling with words she hoped someone would read someday. "We're off course," Ethan admitted, his voice tight. "The map says we should have hit the petroglyphs by now, but this wash isn't even marked." "Then we go back," Noah said, his tone sharp. "First thing tomorrow, we retrace our steps, find the main trail." "And if we can't?" Lila asked, her eyes on the horizon, where the sky was bleeding red. "What if those lights come back?" "They're not real," Ethan snapped, but his hands were shaking as he folded the map. "We're tired, dehydrated. We stick together, we'll be fine." Ava looked up from her sketch, her voice barely audible. "What if Noah's right? What if something's out there?" The hum came again, louder, closer, vibrating through the sand. Noah grabbed his flashlight, sweeping it across the dunes. The beam caught a flicker of pale, shimmering light, darting between the rocks like a living thing. "There," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You see that?" The group scrambled to their feet, their eyes locked on the light as it pulsed, then vanished. Lila's journal fell to the ground, open to a single line. "It's not human, it's watching us." The desert was silent again, but the air felt charged, like a storm was brewing in the shadows. Noah's camera clicked, capturing nothing but darkness. But he knew what he'd seen, and he knew they weren't alone. What was out there? And why did it feel like it was calling them deeper into the ravine? The Mojave Desert didn't care about your plans. It didn't care about your maps, your water jugs, or the dreams you carried in your backpack. It was July 15th, 2006, and the sun was a merciless furnace, cranking the temperature to 116 degrees Fahrenheit by noon. The white Ford Explorer sat stranded in a dry wash near Echo Ravine, its rear passenger tire shredded by a jagged rock hidden in the sand. Ethan Caldwell knelt beside it, sweat pouring down his face, his hands caked with dirt as he tried to dig out the wheel with a collapsible shovel. Lila Harper stood under the canopy, her journal clutched to her chest, her eyes scanning the horizon for that eerie light they'd seen the night before. Noah Delgado paced, his camera swinging from his neck, his ex-Marine instincts screaming that they were running out of time. Ava Ruiz sat on a rock, sketching the strange stone circle they'd found yesterday, her fingers trembling as she tried to make sense of its unnatural precision. They were 3 days into their expedition, and everything was falling apart. The GPS had died completely, its screen a blank gray void. Their water was down to 2 gallons for 4 people, barely enough to last another day in this heat. The satellite phones, their lifeline, were useless, no signal, no matter how many times Ethan climbed the nearest ridge to try. The paper map was their only guide now, but it was useless in this unmapped wash, surrounded by dunes that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. The group was fraying, their voices sharp, their patience burned away by the relentless sun. "We're not moving this thing," Noah said, kicking the SUV's bumper. "The sand's too deep, and that tire's toast. We need to walk for help." Ethan stood, wiping his brow with a grimy hand. "Walk where, Noah?" "We're 10 miles from the nearest trailhead. Maybe more. We've got no signal, no bearings. We stay with the care, it's our best shot at being found." Lila's voice was soft, almost lost in the wind. "We can't stay here. I heard it again last night, the humming. It was closer, and that light. It wasn't a mirage." Ava looked up from her sketch, her sunglasses hiding the fear in her eyes. "Lila, you're freaking me out. It's just the desert. Heat makes you see things, hear things." "It's not just the heat," Noah snapped, his hand resting on the knife at his belt. "Those footprints we saw yesterday? They weren't ours. Someone's out here, and they're not helping us." Ethan threw down the shovel, his face red with frustration. "Enough with the ghost stories, Noah. We're stuck because we missed a turn, not because some boogeyman's stalking us. We stick together, ration the water, and wait for a ranger patrol." Lila opened her journal, her pen scratching out a shaky line. "Day 3, car stuck, water low. Noah says we're being watched. I believe him." She looked at the others, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I wrote down everything, the humming, the light, the footprints. If we don't make it, someone needs to find this." Ava stood, brushing sand from her shorts. "Don't talk like that, Lila. We're getting out of here. Right, Ethan?" Ethan nodded, but his eyes were on the map, his fingers tracing a route that didn't exist. "Right. We just need to hold out. Rangers patrol these areas. They'll find us." Noah snorted, his gaze fixed on the dunes. "You think rangers come out here? This isn't a tourist trail. This is no man's land. We need to move, or we're dead." The argument hung in the air, heavy as the heat. The group was splitting, not just in opinion, but in spirit, their trust eroding under the weight of fear and exhaustion. The desert was watching, silent and indifferent, and it felt like it was waiting for them to break. By mid-afternoon, the situation was dire. The water was down to 1.5 gallons, and the heat was suffocating, making every breath feel like inhaling fire. Ethan had rigged a tarp over the SUV to create shade, but it did little to ease the oppressive weight of the sun. Ava tried to lighten the mood, sketching a lizard she'd seen earlier, but her hand shook, and her pencil kept slipping. Noah sat on the hood, his camera trained on the horizon, snapping photos of nothing but sand and rock, as if he could capture whatever was out there. Lila wrote in her journal, her words growing more frantic. "The light came again last night. Closer. It moved like it was alive. I think it knows we're here. We can't wait anymore. Noah said, his voice low but firm. We're out of water by tomorrow. There's a ranger station north, maybe 15 miles. If we leave now, we can make it by nightfall. Well, Ethan shook his head, his jaw tight. 15 miles in this heat, with 1 gallon of water? You're out of your mind. We stay with the carrots protocol. Rangers will spot it from the air. Protocol? Noah laughed, bitter and sharp. You think the desert cares about protocol? We're not in a lab, Ethan. This is survival. Ava stood between them, her hands raised. Stop it, both of you. Fighting won't get us out of here. Maybe we can compromise and send 2 of us for help. 2 stay with the car. Lila closed her journal, her eyes wide with fear. We can't split up. You heard the humming last night. You saw the light. Whatever's out here, it wants us alone. Noah turned to her, his face softening for the first time all day. Lila, I'm not saying you're wrong, but staying here is a death sentence. We've got no signal, no water, no way out unless we move. Ethan folded the map, his hands shaking with anger. And what if you get lost? What if you die out there, and we're stuck waiting for nothing? We stay together. The argument spiraled, voices rising until they were shouting over each other, the desert swallowing their words. Ava finally slammed her sketchbook down, her voice cutting through the chaos. Enough. We're wasting energy. Let's vote. Who wants to stay? Who wants to go? Ethan raised his hand for staying. Lila hesitated, then joined him, her eyes darting to the dunes as if expecting that light to reappear. Noah raised his hand for going, his stare defiant. Ava sighed, her hand hovering, then dropped it. I'm with Noah. We can't just sit here and hope. Ethan's face fell, betrayal flashing in his eyes. You're making a mistake. The desert's not a place to take chances. Then come with us, Noah said, his voice almost pleading. We're stronger together. Huh. Lila shook her head, her voice barely audible. I can't leave the car. It's all we have left. The decision was made, but it felt like a fracture, a crack in the group that the desert could exploit. They spent the next hour dividing their Geertwo quarts of water for each pair, a satellite, phone each, a flashlight, and half the remaining food. Ethan marked the map with 2 routes, north to the supposed ranger station, southeast to Split Tooth Ridge, a rock formation Noah had mentioned in his blog as a landmark. They hugged, a tense, desperate embrace, and then they split, each pair disappearing into the shimmering heat, the desert swallowing their footsteps. Noah and Lila headed north, their boots sinking into the sand, the sun searing their skin. Noah carried the water jug, his camera bouncing against his chest, his eyes scanning for any sign of a trail. Lila clutched her journal, her pen scratching out every detail. July 15th, 1 p.m., heading north with Noah. Ethan and Ava went southeast. The humming's louder today, like it's following us. The air was thick, the silence broken only by their labored breathing and the occasional rustle of wind. Noah kept glancing back, half expecting to see the SUV, but it was gone, lost behind a dune. You okay? He asked, his voice rough from the dry air. Lila nodded, but her eyes were on the horizon, where a faint flicker danced, too brief to be sure. You see that? She whispered. Noah stopped, his hand tightening on the water jug. Yeah, same as last night. Keep moving, don't look at it. But Lila couldn't help it. She stared, her heart pounding as the light pulsed, then vanished. It's not a mirage, Noah. It's alive. Don't say that, he said, his voice sharp. We're dehydrated, exhausted. It's playing tricks on us. Lila wrote in her journal, her hand shaking. The light's closer. It knows we're here. She didn't show Noah, but she felt a presence, something watching from the shadows of the dunes. They walked on, the humming growing louder, a low, rhythmic pulse that seemed to come from the earth itself. Noah snapped a photo, his camera catching a blur in the distance, a figure, maybe, or just the heat warping the air. He didn't look at the screen, he didn't want to know. Meanwhile, Ethan and Ava trudged southeast, their path marked by jagged rocks and soft sand that sucked at their boots. Ethan carried the map, his compass dangling from his neck, his scientist's mind clinging to logic despite the fear gnawing at him. Ava followed, her sketchbook tucked into her pack, her eyes scanning for split-tooth ridge. The heat was unbearable, their water down to a single quart, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by their footsteps and the occasional skitter of a lizard. "You think they'll make it?" Ava asked, her voice hoarse. Ethan didn't look at her, his eyes fixed on the map. "Noah's tough, Lila's smart. They've got a shot. We just need to find that ridge." Ava nodded, but her mind was on the stone circle they'd seen yesterday, its unnatural symmetry haunting her. Those rocks back there, they weren't random. Someone put them there, Ethan. Maybe a long time ago. "Focus, Ava," he said, his tone sharper than he meant. "We're not here to play archaeologist. We're here to survive." But Ava couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something ancient, something that didn't want them here. She stopped, her breath catching as she saw a faint flicker of light, darting between the rocks ahead. "Ethan, look." He followed her gaze, his heart sinking as the light pulsed, then vanished. "It's nothing," he said, but his voice trembled. "Just keep moving." Ava pulled out her sketchbook, her pencil flying across the page. Light in the distance, southeast of Wash. Not natural. Something's wrong. She didn't show Ethan, but she felt it too, a presence, a weight, like the desert was closing in around them. By nightfall, both pairs were miles apart, separated by sand and rock, and a growing sense of dread. Noah and Lila camped in a shallow gully, their flashlight casting weak beams into the darkness. The humming was constant now, a low throb that seemed to vibrate in their bones. Lila wrote in her journal, her words frantic, "It's following us. The light's closer." Noah won't admit it, but he's scared too. Noah kept watch, his camera trained on the dunes, his knife in his hand. He saw the light again, closer now, circling their camp like a predator. He snapped a photo, the flash illuminating a figure in the distance, tall, blurred, not human. He lowered the camera, his heart pounding, and told himself it was a trick of the light. Ethan and Ava camped near a rocky outcrop, their water gone, their bodies aching from the heat. Ethan marked their position on the map, his compass spinning wildly, useless in this strange terrain. Ava sketched by firelight, her drawing of split-tooth ridge half finished, interrupted by a note, "Light again, it's watching us." She looked up, her eyes meeting Ethan's, and saw the fear he'd been hiding all day. "We'll find the ridge tomorrow," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We'll be okay." But the humming was louder now, pulsing through the sand, and the light was back, flickering just beyond their camp. Ava grabbed her sketchbook, her hand shaking as she wrote, "It's not human. It wants us to follow." Ethan saw it too, his hand tightening on the compass, his scientist's logic crumbling under the weight of the unknown. The desert was alive, and it was closing in. What was out there, and why was it calling them deeper into the ravine? The Mojave Desert didn't give up its secrets easily. It was late August 2006, 6 weeks since Ethan Caldwell, Lila Harper, Noah Delgado, and Ava Ruiz vanished into the scorched expanse of Echo Ravine. The sun was a relentless tyrant, pushing the temperature past 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and the air was so dry it felt like breathing sandpaper. Joshua Tree National Park buzzed with activity, but it wasn't the usual tourist hum. Search teams in khaki uniforms swarmed the area, their boots kicking up dust as drones whined overhead, scanning the endless dunes. Dogs barked in the distance, their noses pressed to the ground, while a California Air National Guard helicopter circled, its blades chopping through the heavy silence. The operation spanned 600 square miles, a desperate bid to find 4 friends who disappeared without a trace. It started with a tip from a drone operator testing wildfire surveillance gear near Echo Ravine. He'd spotted a white speck half buried in the sand, zoomed in, and confirmed it. A 2006 Ford Explorer, its paint dulled by sun and wind, its windows coated in desert grit. The roof's ID tag matched the missing group's rental. Rangers found it parked at a steep angle in a dry wash, hemmed in by jagged rocks, as if the desert itself had cornered it. All 4 tires were slashed, maybe from the terrain, maybe not. No skid marks, no trail leading in or out, just a vehicle frozen in time, abandoned in a place no map acknowledged. Caleb Ortiz, a grizzled park ranger with 20 years on the job, was one of the first on the scene. His weathered face tightened as he peered inside the SUV. Empty water jugs littered the back seat, their lids off, bone dry. A first aid kit lay open, its contents scattered like someone had rummaged through in a panic. A shattered walkie-talkie sat on the floor, its antenna snapped clean. A sun-faded map was pinned under a rock on the dashboard, pencil marks circling spots labeled Split Tooth Ridge and North Wash. But it was the notepad on the passenger seat that stopped Caleb cold. In shaky handwriting, likely Lila's, a single line read, "Stuck, wash too deep, heading north, 1:32 p.m. No distress call." Caleb muttered to his partner, a younger ranger named Jess. They had sat phones, fully charged, right here in the glove box. Why didn't they use them? Jess shook her head, her eyes scanning the horizon. Maybe they thought they could get out, or maybe something stopped them. Caleb didn't respond. He'd worked this park long enough to know its story: shikers lost to heat stroke, climbers buried by rock slides, and the older tales, whispered by locals, about lights in the desert that led people astray. He'd warned the group when he'd seen them at the visitor center, their SUV packed to the brim, their faces bright with excitement. "Stay out of Echo Ravine at night," he'd said. "Things don't add up out there." They'd nodded, but he'd seen the look in their I-City folks who thought they could outsmart the desert. The discovery of the SUV sparked a massive search, one of the largest in California's recent history. Volunteers poured in from 29 Palms, their pickup trucks lining the park's entrance. Dogs from Inyo and Kern counties sniffed every crevice, while drones mapped the terrain in high definition. The Air Guard chopper swept low, its pilot reporting nothing but sand and rock for miles. Caleb led a ground team, his boots sinking into the soft dunes as he followed the map's circled locations. They found nothing, no footprints, no dropped gear, no sign that 4 people had walked away from that vehicle. It's like they were erased. Caleb told a reporter from the local paper, his voice rough with frustration. "The SUV's here, but the people? They're just gone." Noah Delgado, Noah's younger sister, arrived from Albuquerque the day the SUV was found. She was a journalist, sharp and relentless, her dark eyes burning with a mix of grief and determination. She cornered Caleb outside the ranger station, her notebook clutched like a weapon. "You met my brother," she said, her voice steady but edged with anger. "You saw them before they left. What did he say? What did they know?" Caleb sighed, his hat shading his face from the sun. "They were prepared, Maya. Water, phones, maps, the works. I told them to avoid Echo Ravine at night. Said there were stories, lights, sounds, people going missing. They didn't take it seriously." Maya's jaw tightened. Noah's not the type to vanish without a fight. He was a Marine. If he had a phone, he'd have called. If he had a way out, he'd have taken it. Something happened out there, and I want to know what. Caleb met her gaze, his voice low. "I've seen a lot in this park, ma'am. Most times, it's heat or bad luck. But Echo Ravine, it's different. I've heard things at night, seen lights where no one's supposed to be. I don't know what got your brother, but I know this place keeps secrets." Maya scribbled his words, her hand shaking. "Then I'll find them myself." The search stretched into weeks, each day hotter and more hopeless than the last. Teams combed caves, scoured dried-up creek beds, and followed every faint trail that might lead to answers. They found a scrap of fabric near the SUV, torn and stained with what looked like blood, but lab tests were inconclusive, too degraded by the sun. A volunteer stumbled on another stone circle, 2 miles from the vehicle, its rocks arranged with eerie precision. Caleb photographed it, his gut twisting. It was like the one Ava had sketched, the one they'd found before they vanished. He didn't tell the others, but he'd seen a similar circle years ago, near the spot where a prospector named Carver disappeared in 1985. That case had haunted him, the man's journal mentioning lights that moved like they were alive. Maya haunted the ranger station, her questions relentless. She dug up Noah's old blog posts, including one from a week before the trip. Echo Ravine's got a history. People go in, but they don't come out. I'm going to find out why. She showed it to Caleb, her voice cracking. He knew something was off. Why didn't he tell me? Caleb shook his head. He probably didn't want to worry you. Your brother was stubborn. Thought he could handle anything. He could, Maya said, her eyes fierce. Which means whatever got him wasn't normal. She started her own investigation, interviewing locals, combing through old news clippings. One caught her eye: a 1985 article about Carver, the prospector, whose journal mentioned lights leading me too far. Another from 1992 described a hiker who'd vanished in Echo Ravine, leaving behind a note, "Don't follow the glow." Maya's blood ran cold. She showed the articles to Caleb, who read them in silence, his face grim. "You think it's connected?" she asked. Caleb hesitated, then nodded. "Maybe, but we've got no proof, just stories. And stories don't find people." By mid-September, the search was winding down, the urgency fading into a grim acceptance. The dogs were sent back to their kennels, the drones grounded, the chopper recalled. Volunteers drifted away, their faces heavy with failure. Caleb filed his report, labeling the case an unresolved anomaly, a term that felt like a betrayal to the families waiting for answers. The SUV was towed to a National Park Service lot in 29 Palms, covered with a tarp, a ghost of the lives it once carried. Maya refused to let it go. She camped near the ranger station, her tent pitched under a Joshua tree, her laptop glowing late into the night as she pored over Noah's blog, his emails, anything that might hold a clue. She found an old message from him, sent the day before the trip. "If anything goes wrong, check the ravine's eastern caves. Something's there." She showed it to Caleb, her voice trembling with hope. "Caves?" Caleb said, frowning. "There's nothing mapped out there, just rock and sand." "Then we look," Maya said. "I'm not giving up on him." Caleb sighed, his eyes on the horizon, where the dunes seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "You don't understand, Maya. The desert doesn't give back what it takes. You go out there alone, you might not come back either." She didn't flinch. "Then come with me." He didn't answer, but the next day, he joined her on a hike to the eastern edge of Echo Ravine, their boots crunching through the sand. They found nothing: no caves, no tracks, just a faint hum in the air that made Caleb's skin crawl. He didn't tell Maya, but he'd heard it before, years ago, in the same spot where Carver's pack was found. As they turned back, empty-handed, he saw a flicker of light, darting between the rocks, gone in an instant. He froze, his heart pounding, but Maya didn't notice, her eyes fixed on the ground, searching for something she'd never find. The case went cold, the files boxed up and labeled Caldwell, Harper, Delgado, Ruiz Group. Missing July 2006. The families kept searching, hiring private trackers, posting flyers, visiting Echo Ravine year after year. Maya became a fixture in 29 Palms, her face known to every ranger, her questions a constant drumbeat. She interviewed locals, including an old Navajo woman named Esther who lived on the edge of the park. Esther's voice was low, her eyes distant as she spoke. "Echo Ravine's no place for outsiders," she said, her hands folded in her lap. "The lights aren't lanterns. They're spirits, leading people where they shouldn't go. My grandfather warned us, stay away, or you'll be taken." Maya scribbled every word, her heart racing. "Taken where?" Esther shook her head. "Someplace you don't come back from." Maya didn't believe in spirits, but she couldn't shake the woman's words. She kept Noah's message taped to her dashboard, "Check the eastern caves." She drove to Echo Ravine every weekend, her flashlight sweeping the rocks, her voice calling her brother's name into the wind. One night, she saw it, a pale, shimmering light, pulsing in the distance, then vanishing. She froze, her breath catching, her hand tightening on her flashlight. It wasn't a mirage. It was real. Back at the ranger station, Caleb sat at his desk, staring at a photo of the stone circle they'd found near the SUV. He hadn't told anyone, but he'd seen another circle that night, smaller, tucked behind a dune. In its center was a single object, a rusted knife, its blade etched with the initials ND Noah Delgado. Caleb bagged it, his hands shaking, and locked it in his desk. He didn't tell Maya. He didn't tell anyone. The desert was watching, and he wasn't sure he wanted to know what it was hiding. What had happened to those 4 friends? And what was still out there, waiting in the shadows of Echo Ravine? The Mojave Desert was a graveyard of secrets, its sand swallowing stories whole. It was April 2023, and Echo Ravine was alive with the hum of investigation. The site where Dr. Sarah Nguyen had stumbled across a silver necklace and a human bone was now a sealed-off crime scene, ringed with yellow tape and guarded by park rangers under a blistering sun that pushed the temperature to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Forensic teams from the California Missing Persons Task Force worked shoulder to shoulder with anthropologists, their brushes sifting through sand that clung to every clue like a jealous lover. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made your skin prickle, as if the desert itself was holding its breath, daring them to dig deeper. Sarah stood at the edge of the perimeter, her water bottle sweating in her hand, watching as the team unearthed 3 shallow graves near the dry wash. Each was about 5 feet long, hand-dug, their edges crumbling under the weight of 17 years. Bone fragments gleamed in the sunlight, stark against the red-brown earth, alongside scraps of fabric and a corroded belt buckle engraved with LH, Lila Harper. A canvas camera bag lay near the second grave, its zipper rusted shut, containing a cracked lens and a Ziploc pouch, with 2 35mm film canisters. The third grave held a faded journal, its pages fused by time and heat, but a partial thumbprint on the cover had already confirmed Lila's identity. The necklace, etched with EC for Ethan Caldwell, was the first clue that tied this grim discovery to the 4 friends who vanished in July 2006. Dr. Elena Torres, the forensic anthropologist, knelt beside the graves, her gloved hands moving with quiet precision. "These weren't dug with tools," she said, her voice low but carrying in the still air. "Look at the claw marks in the dirt. Someone used their hands, maybe their nails. This was desperation." Sarah's stomach twisted. Who would bury them out here? And why only 3 graves? There were 4 of them. Elena glanced up, her face unreadable behind her sunglasses. "That's the question, isn't it? We've got Lila Harper and Ethan Caldwell confirmed, and the bones in the 3rd grave match Ava Ruiz's profile, female, late 20s, early 30s. But Noah Delgado? He's not here." Marcus Reed, the detective leading the investigation, scribbled in his notepad, his jaw tight. No 4th grave, no sign of Delgado. Either he walked away, or something else happened. "Any other finds?" Elena pointed to a waterproof pouch, half buried under a rock pile camouflaged by years of erosion. "Found this an hour ago. 2 SD cards, labeled EC and LH. We're sending them to a lab in Vegas for data recovery. Could be a gold mine." Sarah's eyes flicked to the pouch, her mind racing. SD cards? From 2006? They might have photos, maybe a timeline. "Exactly," Elena said, standing and brushing sand from her knees. "If those cards are intact, we might finally know what happened out here." The team worked through the afternoon, their floodlights casting harsh shadows as the sun dipped low. Sarah stayed, her curiosity outweighing her exhaustion, her thoughts circling the note she'd found. "Don't trust the lights at night." She hadn't told anyone, but she'd seen that flicker again last night, a pale glow darting across the dunes outside her motel. It wasn't a mirage moved with purpose, like it was searching for something, or someone. By the next morning, the Las Vegas lab had cracked open the journal and the SD cards, and the results sent a shockwave through the investigation. The journal, Lila's, was a battered relic, its pages brittle but legible after careful steaming in a temperature-controlled lab. The entries painted a chilling picture of the group's final days, starting with their excitement and ending in terror. One line, written in blue ink, stood out. "It's not human, it's watching us." The thumbprint confirmed Lila's identity, and DNA from the belt buckle matched her too. The 3rd grave's bones were Ava's, confirmed by dental records from Santa Fe. Ethan's remains were identified by a fractured wrist bone, matching an old injury from his college days. But the SD cards were the real breakthrough. The lab extracted over 200 photos, each time-stamped, a visual diary of the group's descent into chaos. The early images were what you'd expect: Ethan grinning at a Joshua tree, Ava sketching a rock formation, Noah capturing a coyote at golden hour, Lila writing in her journal under a hammock strung between two cacti. But as the days progressed, the tone shifted. Photos showed cracked canyon walls, blistered feet, a deflated tire beside the SUV. One image caught Ethan squinting into the sun, pointing at a map, his face tight with worry. Another showed Ava shielding her eyes, the desert stretching endlessly behind her. Then came the final photo, time-stamped July 15th, 2006, at 1:47 p.m. It was blurred, off-center, the lens streaked with sand, but unmistakable. A figure walking away from the camera, a shirt wrapped tightly around their head, a water jug balanced on their hip. Behind them, the SUV sat motionless, dwarfed by the towering walls of Echo Ravine. The figure was Lila, her silhouette unmistakable, heading north alone. The image didn't just confirm they'd left the vehicle, it proved they'd tried to survive, walking into the wild with no guarantee of rescue. Marcus gathered the team under a canopy, his voice grim as he held up printouts of the photos. "This changes everything," he said. They didn't stay with the car. Lila and Noah went north, likely toward a ranger station. Ethan and Ava headed southeast, probably aiming for Split Tooth Ridge. They split up, and it cost them. Sarah's eyes were on the final photo, Lila's lone figure swallowed by the desert. Why didn't they call for help? They had sat phones. Elena shook her head. Found both phones in the SUV, fully charged, unused. The emergency beacon was off too. Either they thought they could make it, or something stopped them from trying. A new voice cut in, low and measured. Or they didn't trust the signal. Dr. Isaac Begay, a Navajo anthropologist from Flagstaff, stepped into the canopy, his weathered face etched with concern. The team had called him in to consult on the stone circles found near the graves, their eerie precision hinting at cultural significance. "My people don't come to Echo Ravine," he said, his eyes on the photos. "We call it Denatawayachwani, the place where spirits walk. Those lights in the journal, the ones Lila wrote about, they're not lanterns, they're something else." Marcus raised an eyebrow, his pen pausing. "You're saying this is what? Supernatural?" "I'm saying it's not new," Isaac said. "My grandfather told stories of lights leading people off trails, into places they don't come back from. The stone circles? They're markers, warnings. Someone or something didn't want those for here." Sarah's throat tightened. Lila's journal mentioned a humming sound too, like it was alive. Isaac nodded, his gaze distant. "The desert speaks, but not always in ways we understand. Those lights that hum, they're part of this place. Always have been." The team fell silent, the weight of his words settling over them. Sarah glanced at the stone circle near the graves, its rocks glinting in the sun. She hadn't told anyone, but she'd seen another circle last night, smaller, tucked behind a dune near her motel. In its center was a single stone, etched with a symbol she couldn't place: a spiral, jagged, like a warning carved by a trembling hand. Noah Delgado arrived at the site that afternoon, her pickup truck skidding to a stop in a cloud of dust. Noah's sister was a force of nature, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes burning with a mix of hope and fury. She'd been chasing answers since 2006, her life consumed by her brother's disappearance. When Marcus briefed her on the findings: 3 graves, Lila's journal, the SD card, she listened in silence, her hands clenched into fists. "You're telling me you found Lila, Ethan, and Ava," she said, her voice steady but laced with pain. "But not Noah. Why not Noah?" Marcus sighed, flipping through his notepad. "We don't know, Maya. There's no 4th grave, no remains. The photos show him with Lila, heading north, but that's where the trail ends." Maya's eyes flicked to the SD card printouts, lingering on the final image of Lila walking away. He wouldn't leave her. Not Noah. If he's not here, he's somewhere else. Alive or... She trailed off, unable to say the word. Isaac stepped forward, his voice gentle. The desert doesn't always give everything back, Miss Delgado. But those markers, the circles, they mean something. Your brother might have seen something he wasn't supposed to. Maya's jaw tightened. Like what? Spirits? Lights? I don't believe in that crap. Noah was a Marine. He'd fight tooth and nail to get out. Maybe he did, Elena said, holding up a new evidence bag. Inside was a 10-second video clip, recovered from one of the SD cards. We found this an hour ago. It's Noah. The team crowded around a laptop, the screen flickering as the clip played. It was grainy, the audio distorted by wind, but Noah's voice was unmistakable, raw with panic. Don't come near it, he shouted, his face half lit by a flashlight. The camera shook, catching a blur of sand and rock, then cut to black. The timestamp read July 15, 2006, 2 minutes past 2 p.m., just 15 minutes after Lila's final photo. Sarah's heart pounded. What was he talking about? What's it? No one answered. Maya's eyes were locked on the screen, tears welling but not falling. He's out there, she said, her voice breaking. I know he is. The investigation pushed deeper into Echo Ravine, guided by the photo's GPS metadata. Search teams fanned out, their boots crunching through sand, their eyes scanning for any sign of Noah. They found another stone circle, larger than the others, near a rocky outcrop 3 miles from the graves. In its center was a rusted knife, its blade etched with Noah Delgado. Caleb Ortiz, the ranger who joined the search, bagged it without a word, his face pale. He didn't tell the team, but he'd seen that knife before, in Noah's hand at the visitor center, when he'd been sharpening a stick and laughing about survival skills. Then came the biggest find yet. A ranger stumbled across a hidden cave, its entrance camouflage. It? Maya said, her voice sharp. What does that mean? What did he see? Isaac's face was grim. The stories say the spirits in Echo Ravine don't just lead you astray. They keep you. That cave, it's not on any map. My people avoid it for a reason. Sarah's mind flashed to the note. Don't trust the lights at night. She hadn't seen the flicker since last night, but the memory of it lingered, a cold weight in her chest. We need to search that cave, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. If Noah's out there, that's where we'll find answers. Marcus nodded, but his eyes were on the horizon, where the dunes seemed to pulse with a life of their own. We go in tomorrow, first light. But I'm warning you, this place doesn't play fair. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep, her motel room in 29 Palms feeling too small, too exposed. She opened her laptop, pulling up the photos from the SD cards, her eyes lingering on Lila's lone figure, walking into the desert. She scrolled to Noah's video, playing it again, his voice echoing, "Don't come near it." Outside, the desert was silent, but she felt it a presence, watching, waiting. She glanced out the window, her heart stopping as a faint light flickered in the distance, then vanished. The cave was out there, hiding something, and she knew they were about to walk straight into its jaws. What had Noah seen? And was he still out there, lost in the shadows of Echo Ravine? The Mojave Desert didn't sleep. It waited, its sands shifting under a star-strewn sky, its secrets buried deep beneath the dunes. It was June 2023, and Echo Ravine was a hive of quiet urgency, the air thick with the weight of a 17-year-old mystery inching toward resolution. The site where 3 shallow graves had been found holding the remains of Ethan Caldwell, Lila Harper, and Ava Ruiz was still cordoned off, yellow tape fluttering in the dry wind. The temperature hovered at 95 degrees Fahrenheit, but the heat felt heavier, as if the desert itself was pressing down, daring the investigators to keep digging. Sarah and Nguyen stood at the edge of the perimeter, her eyes on the hidden cave they discovered near Split Tooth Ridge, its dark mouth gaping like a wound in the earth. The cave was their last hope, the final thread in a case that had haunted families, rangers, and now her. Maya Delgado was there too, her pickup parked haphazardly, her face set with a determination that bordered on obsession. Noah's sister hadn't slept properly in weeks, her nights spent poring over her brother's old blog posts. His cryptic message about the eastern caves burned into her mind. If anything goes wrong, I'd check the eastern caves. Something's there. The absence of Noah's remains among the graves was a lifeline she clung to, a fragile hope that he might still be out there, somehow, against all odds. She stood beside Marcus Reed, the detective, her voice sharp as she pointed to the cave. That's where we need to look, she said. Noah's not in those graves. He's in there, or he was. Marcus adjusted his hat, his notepad tucked under his arm. We're going in at dawn, Maya. But I'm telling you, don't get your hopes up. 17 years is a long time out here. I know my brother, she snapped. He's a fighter. If there's a chance, I'm taking it. Dr. Isaac Begay, the Navajo anthropologist, stood nearby, his weathered face unreadable. He'd been called in to consult on the stone circles, their eerie precision hinting at something older than the case itself. That cave's no place to go lightly, he said, his voice low. My people call it Tuishia the snake's mouth. It's not just a hole in the rock. It's a place where things don't come back. Sarah's stomach twisted, her mind flashing to the note she'd found. Don't trust the lights at night. She hadn't seen the flickering glow since that night outside her motel, but its memory lingered, a cold weight in her chest. What do you mean, don't come back? She asked. Isaac met her gaze, his eyes dark with warning. The stories say the lights lead you there, to the snake's mouth. Once you're in, the desert decides if you leave. 1. Maya's jaw tightened. I don't care about stories. I care about Noah. We're going in. The team dispersed to prepare, their flashlights bobbing in the dusk as they checked gear and mapped the cave's entrance. Sarah stayed behind, her eyes on the cave, its darkness seeming to pulse with a life of its own. She didn't believe in spirits, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching, waiting for them to step inside. At dawn, the team entered the cave, their headlamps cutting through the inky blackness. Marcus led the way, his hand on his radio, followed by Sarah, Maya, and Isaac, with 2 rangers bringing up the rear. The air was cool, almost suffocating, the walls slick with moisture that shouldn't exist in the Mojave's relentless dryness. The cave was narrow, its ceiling low, forcing them to duck as they moved deeper. Their boots echoed on the stone floor, the sound swallowed by the oppressive silence. Stay close, Marcus said, his voice tight. This place is a maze. We don't need anyone getting lost. Maya's flashlight swept the walls, catching faint scratches marks that looked like they'd been clawed by desperate hands. Noah was here, she said, her voice trembling with certainty. I can feel it. Isaac paused, his headlamp illuminating a cluster of rocks arranged in a small, deliberate circle on the cave floor. Another marker, he said, crouching. Same as the ones outside. This isn't random. Someone meant for it to be seen. Sarah's heart pounded as she knelt beside him, her fingers brushing the stones. They were cold, unnaturally so, and one bore a spiral symbol, jagged and uneven, like the one she'd seen near her motel. What does it mean? She asked. Isaac's voice was barely audible. It's a warning. Or a claim. The spirits here don't share their ground. Marcus snorted, his skepticism cutting through the tension. Let's stick to facts, not folklore. We've got a missing person to find. They pressed deeper, the cave twisting into a series of narrow passages. Sarah's headlamp caught a glint of metal, a rusted knife, its blade etched with ND. It was Noah's, the same one Caleb had found near the stone circle, and locked away, though he'd never told the team. Maya gasped, snatching it up, her hand shaking. This is his. He was here. Before Marcus could respond, a low hum filled the cave, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The team froze, their headlamps flickering as the sound grew louder, vibrating in their chests. Sarah's breath caught, her mind flashing to Lila's journal. The humming's louder today, like it's following us. You hear that? She whispered. Isaac nodded, his face pale. It's the desert's voice. We need to move. They followed the passage, the hum growing stronger, until they reached a small chamber. In the center was a pile of ash, the remnants of a fire long extinguished, surrounded by more stones arranged in a spiral. Scattered nearby were fragments of gira, torn backpack strap, A cracked canteen, a single hiking boot, its sole melted from years of exposure. Maya dropped to her knees, her flashlight illuminating a scrap of paper tucked under a rock. The handwriting was Noah's, unsteady but clear. I saw it. It's not human. Maya's voice broke as she read it aloud. What did he see? What's in here? Isaac's eyes were on the walls, where faint etching spirals, lines, shapes that didn't belong seemed to shimmer in the headlamp's glow. Something older than us, he said. Something that doesn't want to be found. The hum stopped abruptly, leaving a silence that felt heavier than the sound. Sarah's headlamp flickered again, then went out, plunging her into darkness. She fumbled for her spare, her heart racing, as Maya's voice cut through the black. We're not leaving without answers. Noah's here, I know it. But the cave was empty, its passages leading nowhere, looping back on themselves like a trap. They searched for hours, finding only more scratches, more stones, and a single SD card, half buried in the ash pile. Marcus bagged it, his face grim. We'll send this to the lab, he said, but I'm calling it this cave's a dead end. Maya spun on him, her eyes blazing. You're giving up? My brother's out there. He's not, Marcus said, his voice softer now. Maya, it's been 17 years. We've got 3 bodies, his knife, his note. He didn't make it. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. You don't know him. He's a survivor. They left the cave as the sun climbed higher, the desert's heat waiting to greet them. Sarah glanced back, her eyes catching a faint flicker deep in the passage of light, pale and pulsing, then gone. She didn't say anything. She wasn't sure she could. Back in 29 Palms, the lab results came in fast. The SD card from the cave held a single filia blurry photo, timestamped July 16, 2006, 3 minutes past midnight. It showed Noah, his face haggard, standing at the cave's entrance, a flashlight in one hand, his knife in the other. Behind him was a shadow, tall and distorted, its edges bleeding into the darkness. The image was grainy, but the shape wasn't human, not quite. It was the last trace of Noah Delgado, and it raised more questions than it answered. The case was officially closed in the second week of June. The remains of Ethan, Lila, and Ava returned to their families. A memorial was held in Boulder, Colorado, under a desert willow tree planted in their honor. Maya spoke, her voice steady despite the tears. They didn't vanish into mystery, she said, her words carrying over the gathered crowd. They walked into the unknown, and they fought. Noah's still out there, somewhere, and I won't stop looking. In Santa Fe, Ava's community college dedicated a garden to her, its stones arranged in a spiral that echoed the ones in Echo Ravine. Ethan's students in Boulder created a scholarship in his name, funding desert ecology research. Lila's journals were published, her words a haunting testament to their final days, read by thousands who'd never met her but felt her fear through every page. But the mystery of Noah lingered, a wound that wouldn't close. Maya returned to Echo Ravine alone, against Isaac's warnings, her flashlight sweeping the dunes as she called her brother's name. She found nothing, no tracks, no gear, just the same oppressive silence. One night, as she camped near the cave, she saw Ida flickering light, darting between the rocks, then vanishing. She scribbled it in her notebook, her hand shaking. I saw what Noah saw. It's still here. Lessons from the desert. The Echo Ravine case wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning. Park rangers and survival experts re-evaluated their protocols, their voices urgent in the wake of the findings. GPS is a tool, not a god, said Ranger Caleb Ortiz, his face lined with years of desert lessons. It can fail you when you need it most. Always carry a paper map, and know how to read it. The Mojave doesn't forgive mistakes. Experts emphasized preparation, 2 gallons of water per person per day, a backup radio like a CB, and a clear itinerary shared with someone outside your group. Don't go off trail in unmapped areas, said Dr. Elena Torres. Echo Ravines, Amaza canyons, washes, false trails. Even the best hikers can get turned around. The stone circles and lights remained unexplained, dismissed by most as heat-induced hallucinations or folklore. But Isaac Begay's words lingered. The desert's alive in ways we don't understand. Respect it, or it'll take you. His advice was simple: avoid remote areas alone, especially at night, and heed local warnings, even if they sound like myths. The case shifted park policy, with new signs marking off-grid trails and warnings about outdated maps. Online forums buzzed with survival tips, replacing conspiracy theories with practical advice. Check your gear, know your limits, turn back if something feels wrong. The desert wasn't a monster, but it was merciless, demanding respect from anyone who dared to cross it. Maya's search continued, her pickup a familiar sight in 29 Palms. She carried Noah's knife, her brother's last message, etched in her mind. I saw it. It's not human. She didn't know if he was alive, lost, or taken, but she knew one thing: the desert hadn't finished with her yet. As she stood at the edge of Echo Ravine, the wind whispering through the dunes, a faint light flickered in the distance, calling her deeper. She took a step, her heart pounding, and the desert watched, silent and waiting. What was out there, and would it ever let Noah go?